Man. What's going on, man? You good?
Yeah, I'm all right. I got a sweet tooth this morning, so I picked up some cookies. Got the slightly healthier ones, because I'm trying to get fit. But it says like 9 to 11 minutes for a chewy cookie. These things have been in there for 45 minutes.
45 minutes?
You can't trust anyone.
No, come on. Yeah, those are raw.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. But listen. This kind of thing keeps happening to me recently, right? So went to the gym now for like 3 months, like every day almost.
Yeah.
0 results.
Nothing? I mean, what have you been doing? Cardio, calisthenics? You've been doing weight training?
Well, I'm more of a bench guy.
Got it. I mean, maybe you could get a trainer, like somebody to help you get to where you want to be, see the results you want. They even have, group classes.
Yeah, that's cool. But listen, the other thing I've been trying to do to get energy is go to the coffee shop. Everyone said, go to the coffee shop, get you a little pick-me-up. Yeah. I've been in there like every day. Well, nothing, 0 energy.
I mean, if regular coffee's not working for you, you can always try espresso and maybe even a double shot.
Yeah, I actually never tried the coffee.
So let me get this straight. You just go in the shop and sit.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
All right. Look, man. I think I have some good ideas that can help you out. But first, let's start with turning the oven on.
I usually get to be in the videos with those guys. Feel a little left out. That's okay. They're up to more shenanigans as always. And as always, those scenarios are a bit absurd. But I think we can relate to them a little more than we might think, which we'll come back to that in a little bit. But a couple weeks ago when this series started, Pastor Angie began her message by talking about the first mission trip she ever went on. And naturally, memories of the trips I've been on started cycling through my head. We all heard just a moment ago about all the incredible things God has used us to do this summer through Do Good. And I've done a lot of projects similar to that throughout my life. I remember how passionate I was about doing whatever I could to partner with the missionaries and local pastors to do whatever they needed us to do. Building new homes in Brazil, leading kids camps in Macedonia and Spain, partnering with a long-term missionary in China, working with a youth organization, playing free concerts in Guatemala, and of course, replacing more roofs, siding, paint, decks, and ramps than I can count right here in the U.S. Putting in many hours of hard work with my hands had given way for God to do many hours of hard work on my heart, molding me more and more into the person I ought to be. And that's why every year when we take our students on the mission trip, I try and tell as many of them as I can to soak up every moment, to lean in during our worship time, to not be afraid to sweat and grind out the exhausting work of rebuilding and replacing, rewiring, and restoring what's broken for the people we're serving. Because just like it did for me, when they go all in, when our students get their hands dirty and help change someone's situation, God often changes them too. You might say it's the fire in my bones when it comes to the student mission trip. Helping students see that the trip is something more than another thing to attend. It's more than a checkbox on the spiritual checklist. Because it would be easy enough to just come and do the bare minimum, right? I mean, show up to worship, but not listen. Go to the work site and not work. Look at your phone during free time instead of engaging with the other people there. And sure, at the end of the week, they'd still be able to say that they went, but chances are high that when they looked back on the trip, they'd remember it with the same enthusiasm they put into it. They might start to wonder why people like me and others talk about how transformative it can be, because I don't feel any different than I did before I went. I definitely haven't changed in some spiritual way like they said I would. And what I want to say to these students is, well, you just showed up. You didn't participate. You just received what was being offered rather than participate in making it happen. And that doesn't come from a place of judgment or like, duh, you should have known better. More than anything else, my heart hurts for students who have this experience because I know firsthand the molding and shaping from God that they so desperately need, that I so desperately need. And they're missing it. I want it for every single one of them. As it turns out, that same fire in my bones burns for you too. And it isn't about the student mission trip, although we're always looking for people to help make those happen. So if you're interested, talk to Ellis, talk to me, shameless plug. Anyway, the fire in my bones for us in this moment is related to, well, this, church. Just like students on the mission trip, we all have the temptation to view and experience church through the lens of a passive recipient rather than an active participant. We're all prone to show up at church, hear what pastors like me and others have to say, and then leave and get on with our regularly scheduled programming. I mean, church for many of us is a place we come to and an activity we do every week, every other week, or every so often, anyway. And although this sometimes proves to be beneficial, like when you hear a song that speaks to you or a message you feel like was written just for you, almost all of us eventually sink back into the daily routine and rhythm of life outside of the walls of the church. And just like students who look back on the mission trip, some of us can become disillusioned with church, thinking, they say you can have the fullest life possible, but I've been coming for a long time and my life doesn't feel any different. This, of course, can lead to a low value of yourself, like you must be the problem, or feeling like a child who's run away from home, forgotten by your father. But I have great news. Neither of those things are true. And on top of that, this temptation we all feel to see church as something we do, it's really not our fault either, right? I mean, talking about it this way, it's built into our vocabulary. Now, I grew up in church, as in I cannot remember a time in my life where I didn't regularly attend church, mostly because there never was a time like that. Both of my parents were highly involved in church, leading worship, leading student ministry, go figure. So it was nothing for my brothers and I to be at church 4, 5, 6 days out of the week, just waiting around for our parents to be done with rehearsal, meetings, small group, etc. Church rats, they called us, which, looking back on it now, it's a bit derogatory to say of children, right? I mean, come on. We couldn't help but be there. We weren't there of our own accord. We were just there. And besides, rats are smelly. They're scary looking. They're a bit hairy for their size. I mean, they're able to squeeze into nooks and crannies you would not expect them to. And they always seem to know where all the food is. I mean, man, that's kind of accurate. Man, dang. Right on the nose. Now that I think about it, we got some church rats around here too, okay? I heard today that at Alet they call them church urchins, which I don't know which one is worse. Anyway, point is, I've been at church more times than I can count, literally, and overwhelmingly, it is talked about as a place or a thing we go to, right? Kids, it's time to get up, time to go to church. All right, everyone, church is about to start. Hey, you should come to my church. It's at 8:30, 10:30, whatever. But what if I told you that this isn't the way church was intended to be? At least not completely, not primarily. What if I told you that back at the beginning of this whole church thing, Jesus and his followers had a different idea about what it should be? Something more than an item on the checklist, more than something we receive, more than something we do. Instead, what if it were something like this? All of those who believed came together and held everything in common. They sold their possessions and belongings and divided them up to everyone in proportion to their various needs. Day by day, they were all together attending the temple. They broke bread in their various houses, and they ate their food with glad working through something, all right? I'm going to get some water. You know what? We're just going to do that. That's why I brought it out here, but then I didn't use it. All right. Day by day, they were all together attending the temple. They broke bread in their various houses and ate their food with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and standing in favor with all the people. And every day the Lord added to their number those who were being rescued. The book of Acts, where this picture of the earliest church comes from, it's really about what Jesus did through his earliest followers after he was raised from the dead and ascended into heaven. And in a way, the entirety of the book is a glimpse into the earliest form of the church, how it came to be, how many people joined it, the essential figures in spreading the news of Jesus, namely Peter and Paul, in the challenges it faced as it went from a hyper-local movement and became a multinational one. So it's fair to say that if you wanted the fullest picture you could get about the origins of the church, you need to read all of the book of Acts in the books that follow, and the letters that Paul and Peter and others wrote. And that's what the books are. They're letters to the churches that were being formed. That being said, though, these few verses right here tell us so much about the heart behind the church Jesus launched through these people. And parsing out these lines will give us incredible insight on what it really means to be the church. So let's read it again, and this time a little slower, and maybe we'll get to the heart of it that way. All of those who believed came together and held everything in common. They sold their possessions and belongings and divided them up to everyone in proportion to their various needs. Day by day, they were all together attending the temple. They broke bread in their various houses, and they ate their food with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and standing in favor with all the people. And every day, the Lord added to their number those who were being rescued. You see, right away, we get a picture of people giving up literally everything they have for the good of everyone else in the church, putting everything into one big pot and spreading the wealth. You know, it actually reminds me, in a way, of the restaurant Five Guys. Y'all ever been to a Five Guys? Have you been to a Five Guys before? Well, if you haven't, it's a burger chain that prides itself on doing just a few things right. Burgers, hot dogs, and fries. It's about all you can order there. And I gotta say, after you reconcile the fact that you have to take out a private loan to afford it, they do make an excellent burger, for real. Not only that, but they give you a massive portion of fries should you order them. They come in little, regular, and large sizes, but these aren't your mama's little, regular, and large size. Whichever size you order gets an appropriately sized cup full of fries, but then they dump a giant scoop full of extra fries into the bag, which is protocol, by the way. I used to work there. So when you get your order, your 401k burger and your fries are buried beneath a beautiful bounty of boiled peanut-oiled potatoes that the Lord hath freely given unto you. It's so many fries. What's great about it, other than how they taste, is when you go with the group, all you got to do is order like one large fry, and you'll get enough for 7 people to share. You just rip off the top of the brown bag and, to quote Acts, divide them up to everyone in proportion to their various needs. Of course, what the early church did, it meant a little more than sharing Five Guys fries. I mean, it was an incredible thing to even consider doing for them, the same as it would be for us. I mean, can you imagine? All of us bringing everything we have, putting it into the middle of the room and dividing it up based on who needs what? I mean, how insanely radical and countercultural would that be? It was for them. But more than the act itself, I want to focus on the mentality it requires to do such a thing in the first place. And it's this mentality that runs through the entire passage. Day by day, they were all together attending the temple. They broke bread in their various houses and ate their food with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and standing in favor with all the people. And every day, the Lord added to their number those who were being rescued. Notice the two mentions of frequency here: day by day and every day. See, not only were these people committed to sharing what they had with one another or going to the temple together where they would worship and sharing their homes, their food, and their kindness with everybody, but they were bought into the idea that this new thing, this new conglomerate of like-minded people, this new movement that Jesus said would change the world, it was more than a once-a-week event. It was more than an item on the checklist. It was more than something they attended. It was who they were. See, the people of the earliest church, they didn't go to church. They were the church. And they did their best to embody the things Jesus had taught them. Things like love your neighbor as yourself, letting people borrow anything they need without the expectation of it ever being returned, working through arguments and issues with grace and patience, forgiveness and love, giving to those in need in a way that doesn't seek recognition, and most important of all, learning to love God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. See, they made loving Jesus and following his teachings the most important thing in their lives, which required them to pursue it every single day, day after day. Because in order to be shaped into the people God created us to be, the ones he wants us to be, we can't be passive recipients of what Jesus is offering. We have to be active participants in it. I mean, it's a bit like any professional athlete or musician, craftsman, or technician of any kind, right? If they want to be molded into the best they can be in their respective field, what do they have to do? I mean, you already know the answer. They have to immerse themselves in it. They have to study and learn, emulate, practice, test, scrimmage, play, fail, audition, apprentice, and everything in between. And if they do that long enough, every day, they in essence become what they're prioritizing. Or as we like to say around here, they become what they're committed to. Take Kobe Bryant, for example. There are a lot of examples, but let's think about him for a moment. I know he was more than just a basketball player, but when any of us think about him, we automatically think basketball. And that wasn't an accident either. Kobe, maybe more than any other athlete, was known for his work ethic and his drive to become excellent in his craft. And not only does his resume speak for itself, he's a 5-time NBA champion, 18-time All-Star, winner of the MVP in 2008, but this legendary quote by him says it better than any of that. If you want to be excellent, you have to be excellent all the time. It's a way of life. That's how you build habits. When excellence becomes a habit, then it's just who you are. Now, Kobe, of course, is talking about basketball here, but the sentiment he was getting at, it can be applied anywhere. These early church followers, they knew that in order to become like Christ and experience life to the full, as Jesus put it, they needed to completely commit their lives to it. They needed to develop the habit of following Jesus daily in order for it to become who they were. I mean, Jesus said it himself like this: whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? This is what it means to be the church. A group of people devoting themselves to this right here every single day will inevitably live lives similar to the ones described in Acts. And I don't mean in action, although you likely will find yourself doing a lot of what they did, but emulating them in their selflessness, their contentment, their awe of God, in their joy. A few weeks ago, our entire staff and many of you attended the Global Leadership Summit, which, if you don't know, is a 2-day leadership intensive where we hear from top business leaders, executives, pastors, and more about what it means to lead. And each year, Craig Groeschel, pastor of Life Church, he gives the opening talk. And this year, he began by saying, I have bad news. What I'm about to say isn't intended for everyone here because some of you just aren't ready to hear it yet. Well, I'm going to unashamedly borrow some of his language and let you know that the next few things I'm going to say, they aren't intended for everyone in this room, or really, they don't necessarily apply to everyone in this room. Also, where Craig Groeschel and I are different is that I do think everyone here is ready to hear it. In fact, I've already kind of said it in a way, but some of us will know that what I'm about to say applies to them directly. In either case, my hope is that I will give all of us a step to make sure we either leave this place or don't ever find ourselves in it. But with that said, we're just going to get right into it because it's the fire in my bones after all, so I can't not say it even if I cough my way through it. All right? There are people here today, of which I have been before, that treat church and see church as an hour-long get-together once a week in a building or a home, just like the one you're in now. You see it as nothing more than something a Christian ought to do and experience. And even then, it's a struggle to make it all the time. Other things get in the way. And maybe it's true that you feel this way because you've only ever heard it talked about this way. You've only ever known it as a place you go to in a moment in time you experience rather than something else. And if that's you, if you really just didn't know that, there are many pastors here that would love to have more conversation with you. Seriously, there's so much more to this, and it would be an honor to tell you about it. For the majority of us that are here, though, church is something we come to and consume. And we might enjoy the experience. We get to hear songs, and we like to sing with them. We watch a video, hear a message, maybe get a handout at the end, and are grateful for every moment of it. But then we walk out the door and don't think any more about any of this until Sunday morning next week. And this might go on for weeks, months, years. And over time, the obligation of attending church, not the joy of being a part of it, that becomes the only thing church is to us. The monotony of checking the box and just moving on, it erodes at the trust and confidence that we have in the church to help us find the fullest life possible in Jesus. And we might even start to think, well, if this is all it is to be a follower of Jesus, then I'm not sure it's for me. And if you feel that way, if you're in the place where church is something you do once a week on a Sunday, something you attend, then with all the love I have, I want you to consider, maybe you're just showing up. Maybe you're treating this like the person trying to cook on the stove when it's off, the person at the coffee shop waiting for a drink they never ordered, or the guy at the gym just laying on the benches. And I realize that's an exaggerated portrait of what I mean. And it may not even be intentional on your part, but it still might be the case. And if that's you, if you see church as an hour on a Sunday, something to passively receive or consume, then no wonder you might get frustrated with it. I mean, I'm willing to bet that you've wondered why you're not experiencing the life change you hear us talk about all the time. You're not sure why you don't hear from God the same way others do. But it's not because you're broken or we're somehow better than you. It's because there's so much more for you that you haven't tapped into yet. In order to do that, though, you have to rethink your idea of church. You have to reshape what this is in order to experience God moving in your life. And here it is, right here. This space, this building, whether you're in Powhatan or Midlow or Farmville, Fluvanna, Alet, Goochland, Nottoway, or anywhere else in the world you're watching right now, wherever you are physically, none of that is church. You are the church. You are. See, what we do on Sundays is gather the church together to encourage one another, to worship God together, to share the things we've seen him do in our lives, pray for those we love, pray for one another, and then, crucially, send each other out to keep being the church in our community Monday through Saturday. This hour is not church. This is just an hour-long gathering of the church, who are people who love Jesus and are curious about him. That's what the church is. We are called the church. And that's the major difference between what so many of us think about church and how they thought about it in the earliest days. See, for us, it's a moment in time. But for them, it's a movement to be shared with everyone around them. They were a group of people who were just crazy enough to believe Jesus when he said they could change the world. And wouldn't you know it, they did. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I was this person once. Like I said, I grew up in the church, and having spent so much time in the physical building we called the church, it was easy at first to see it as just that. A building you went to, a service you attended, where you just waited around for your parents to be done. It wasn't until I was a teenager and I was given the opportunity to travel with the real church, which I mentioned at the beginning, the people who filled the building on a Sunday, that God opened my eyes to what being the church really meant. And it wasn't about, going overseas, going on an international trip that connected the dots for me. It was the opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with other people who would give so freely of their time, their money, their talents, their energy, their comfort, just for a chance to look in the face of a child and tell them that their situation was not the end of the story. To hold a grieving mother who had just recently lost a child due to disease and represent the love of Jesus for her. To tell teenage orphans that they do have a father that loves them and wants the best for them. Standing next to these incredible people helped me to see that the church is so much deeper and fuller and richer and life-giving than a 1 hour a week service. It is the culmination of everything Jesus hoped we would be. And it is still his plan to change the world. Jesus very rarely used the word church when he spoke. He only says it in one book of the Bible, and even then, depending on the translation, it only appears like 2 or 3 times. And at first, that might feel surprising to you, considering he founded the church. But when you know what he really wanted his church to be, it's really not that strange. I mean, why would he have any reason to talk about it the way we do? The church he was forming was all right there in front of him. His friends, disciples, and those traveling with him every day, sharing with him in the work he was doing, learning how to be content in any situation, learning how to respond when trouble came their way. They were being molded into the person God created them to be in order to help others have that same experience. They were learning to become more like Jesus daily and sharing what they learned with the other people who were there doing the same thing. That was the church. So they didn't see themselves the way we see ourselves. In fact, they would have never called themselves the church at the beginning. Instead, they called themselves the way. Because for them, it was more than a service to attend. It was a way of life to follow. And you can be a part of the way too. You can experience the full life Jesus promised by rejecting the idea that church is just an hour on a day of the week, and embrace church as who you are, who we are. Each of us devoted to one another, encouraging, guiding, sharing, and worshiping as like-minded people who just want to be more like Jesus. Because in a world desperate for something different, something unified, something bigger than itself, we have the opportunity to continue the legacy of the earliest church and in a very real way change the whole world. And it's not that hard to start either. You just need a bit of practice.
Who are you following? Everybody is following somebody or something. Put another way, everyone is a disciple. The question isn't, are you a disciple? It's who or what are you a disciple of? 2,000 years ago, a Hebrew rabbi by the name of Jesus made this invitation: come and follow me. He invited anyone, everyone, to become his disciples or students in living. Over the last 2,000 years, millions of people have said yes to Jesus' invitation. It's changed not only their lives, but the course of human history, and it can do the same for you.
This fall, our entire church will embark on a journey together, a journey toward becoming more like Jesus alongside one another in community. It's a study called Practicing the Way. It's 8 weeks on what it means to move away from being passive recipients of the church on a Sunday and move toward becoming active participants in the church every day. And we're going to do this in 2 ways. The first is we're going to start a new series next week that's built around it, built around the study that's called Practicing the Way. Our series we're just calling The Way. And second, when you leave here in just a moment, you'll have the chance to start this journey by signing up for a small group or by gathering just a few of your friends and family and deciding to do this with them, which you'll hear more about in just a moment. And over the course of 8 weeks, if you'll lean in and prioritize it in your life, you'll see what it's like to be a part of the church, not the building, but the people Jesus has set apart to change the world. Just imagine it with me, please. I mean, what if we all decided to do this? Seriously, what if every single one of us said we were going to take this easy step towards something better, something fuller? Because I know so many of us, we just want something more. And we've been coming, and we come every week, we come every other week, and we just feel like there's still something missing. I know you're out there. So what if you decided to do this? What if you chose to live in community with one another that led to contentment with whatever it is you have or whatever situation you're in? What if you chose to live in a community where you shared the things that you have to help each other whenever you're in need? What if you lived in a community that had awe and reverence for the God who made a way for us to be with him? A community that led us to complete and total joy right now and forevermore. What if you just did that? Wouldn't it be better than what you're doing now? What if we all did it? Because in my mind, there's literally no limit to the transformative power it would have in our counties, in our state, in our country, in our world. It is no small thing to say that the original people that did this, they changed the course of human history. And that is an undeniable fact. So why not us? Because who wouldn't want to be a part of that community? Acts said, people kept being saved. People kept coming every day. Well, of course they did. Because that sounds like heaven to me. So what if we all did it? What if we were all that kind of church? Let's start now. Go and be the church. Wherever you find yourself today, tomorrow, and every day after. And together, let's change the world as Jesus changes us. Amen.
Let's change the world. God's plan for changing the world is his church. Let's be the church. Don't miss the amazing opportunity that's coming to be part of our church-wide endeavor to be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, and do what Jesus did. The series starts next Sunday, so make plans to be here for every week for the 4 weeks that we have it, and get into a group that will be unpacking it even more. Now this content works really well with a small group, like 3 or 4 people. You can do this with just 1 or 2 friends or family members, or you can join one of the groups that we're offering. So check out our website for more information, or just click on the link in the chat. We'll see you next Sunday.